As photographers and videographers, we all have different things we focus on, different subjects that we try to exhibit in our own work, whether that's nature photography, whether that's portraiture, whether that's architecture, whether that's street photography. We all have our different focal lengths and gear that we use. There are a couple lenses out there, but there is one in particular that every photographer or videographer needs to have in their gear bag because it always serves a purpose for that photographer, no matter what subject that they try to detail themselves on. What's up guys, Tomas Keck here, and today we are going to be talking about the 70-200mm F2.8 lens. Now the 70-200mm is like the premier lens for videographers, for photojournalists. It has a great focal length because you got 70, which is fairly wide when you're thinking about more tight shots. And then you got 200, which is really nice and tight and is really, really good for all of that portraiture and other things that you can be doing. Now, if you're a nature photographer, you may be wondering, why would I possibly need this lens? Well, this lens fulfills a large range of subjects that might be a little bit closer. And it is very good when you're doing portraits of different subjects that are involved with nature. As an environmental photographer and filmmaker, I tend to focus on wild animals. But as I go through my work, I tend to meet a lot of really, really cool people that I need to showcase in order to better exhibit my work. And for that, I use this guy, the Tamron 70-200mm F2.8 lens. Now this is an amazing lens for a large scope of things. I use this lens for sports, I use this lens for portraiture, I use this lens for interviews, I use this lens for even like insects and wildlife that tend to be very, very closer than my 600mm can handle. But what makes this lens so good? Why do so many people like it? Well, that's what we're going to be going into today. So, this is the Tamron 70-200mm F2.8. This is their G2, so this is their generation 2, and this lens is part of their SP line. Tamron's SP line is like the equivalent to like Canon's L glass. This is some really high-end stuff and is meant for professionals. I've used this lens on several different assignments where I need to photograph and try to document people that are involved with different environmental organizations, or even if I'm doing some sports photography or some portraiture or trying to get some extra, graduation photos on the side to make some extra cash so I can buy more lenses like this. This is what I use for all of that good stuff. Now, this lens, again, its wide angle is 70 and zooms into 200mm. So if you're talking about compression, about perspective, 200mm F2.8 is insane when you're talking about portraiture. That leads me into pro number one. This lens's image quality is super, super sharp. You are going to be getting some insanely sharp images with this lens, which is really important for portraiture, especially when you're shooting at F2.8, when you're going to get a super blown out depth of field. And because when you're all the way in 200mm, that depth of field is going to be just, the bokeh is going to be insane. This is a bokeh king. So it goes F2.8 all the way through, which is great for portraits, but it's also really good for sports. I've been able to get some insanely sharp photos with this lens, even at F2.8 with some very high megapixel dense sensors like the Canon 90D or the Canon R5. That shows that the resolving power in this lens is able to live up to high density megapixel sensors, which is really important in this day and age because cameras seem to keep getting better and better really, really fast, and you want this lens to have a nice long lifespan in your bag without having to worry about replacing it. Look at this shot I got at USA National Fencing Championships of Nick Itkin. He is an Olympic qualifier fencing another fencer. You can see here that if we crop in super, super tight, we can see every bit of detail on Nick's mask there. And it just makes it perfect for sports shots because with sports, you tend to really want to crop in. Look at this shot. You can see that the part of that I really wanted to crop into where the action is happening is way to the left of the frame and makes up a very small percentage of the entire image. We can crop in super tight and still have a ton of detail. So I am taking full advantage of, in this case, the Canon R5 sensor and really pulling out those details, which is something that I really want. Let's take a look at some portraits. These portraits here are all from a graduation, and you can see that each image here, this was shot with the 1DX paired with the Tamron 70-200. Each image here is super sharp, and I am able to crop in super tight and still see that amazing sharpness that I'm getting at f2.8. It's really important to be able to get sharp images at f2.8 because guess what? We're not going to be in conditions all the time where we can be shooting at higher f-stops, or in this case lower size or smaller sized apertures. So shooting at f2.8 and having a super sharp image is just an amazing thing. And as you can see here, I got some insane images with this lens. Reason number two this lens is amazing is Tamron always does a good job with their weather sealing. I am confident when I go out into the real world, when there's some foggy or misty conditions where maybe it's a little bit rainy, it's starting to rain a little bit, I'm confident that I can go out in the field with this lens and still get great images without having to worry about rain affecting the quality and affecting the build of this lens. Reason number three that this lens is right for you is that its ergonomics, like all of Tamron's lenses, are amazing. There's several different switches here. You got your focal range priority switch. I don't think I'm saying that name right, but you get the point. You all know what that switch is. I think the switches are really well designed where it's very easy to switch back and forth on a whim. And I like lenses and pieces of equipment where I do not have to think when I'm changing settings. I know where all the switches are. All the switches are in a place where I can easily access them while I'm taking pictures. If you can see here, your grip is going to be on this side and you have your switches on this side. So grip, switches, easy to switch back and forth so I do not have to think when I'm changing modes. You got your VC, which is your vibration compensation. That leads us into our next pro. The vibration compensation in this lens is amazing. That is Tamron's word for image stabilization. I think there's a couple other different lingos that different companies use, but yes, the image stabilization or the vibration compensation is amazing on this lens, and you are going to be having a great time shooting without having to worry about image shake or camera shake or however you call it. I use this lens with the Canon R5. With the R5's internal image stabilization, I was able to get some insane results. Now I was shooting at super high shutter speed, so I didn't really have to worry about it, but it's good to know that if I'm in an area where I'm going to be using very low shutter speeds, slow shutter speeds, that I have the peace of mind where I can just keep on shooting and not having to worry about image blur as much as I were to on other lenses. This lens has internal zoom, which is really important, especially when you're in big events, and that's what this lens is primarily designed for. So you're not popping out. This lens is still pretty small and it's nice and light. That is something that is important to me because when I'm putting this lens in my gear bag and making these long expedition trips into the wilderness, I don't want to have to worry about too much extra weight on my back because I'm already carrying a lot of gear, including big telephoto lenses. So that's a big pro as well. Video shooters, you're probably wondering, is this lens able to keep up with some nice video? How does this lens's autofocus and noise handle with a camera? Well, because this lens is also designed for sports, you're going to be getting some super fast autofocus. It's going to happen like lightning, and that makes it great when I'm out in the field taking B-roll, trying to get B-roll shots of different subjects. Video shooters are going to be happy to find that the focusing sound does not really affect the overall nat sound that you're taking in with your camera or microphone. The quality is what you'd expect with Tamron's professional line, their SP line, and something that makes me confident going into the field with something of this caliber. Guys, if you're planning on getting a lens like this, which I highly recommend you do, I love this lens, be sure to check out Milford Photo. Milford Photo is a local Connecticut shop where they sell all types of gear from Canon to Sony to Olympus, any brand that you can think of, and it's an official dealer. So you're getting the warranties, you're getting that peace of mind that you're getting it from a good place that's not gonna try to screw you over. It's a local business, there's great people there. I love that store. I highly recommend that if you're going to buy gear, buy local, especially in these hard times. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, this is the Tamron 70-200mm F2.8 G2. This is much different from the G1. The G1 was a lot slower. The G2 is faster autofocus, better build quality, all of the above. So if you're getting confused, make sure you're looking up Tamron F2.8 G2. Anyway guys, happy shooting, have a great summer, and I'll see you next week.